ultimate success formula. What this is based upon is something very fundamental. And that is that people who succeed in any situation have a pattern of what they do to succeed. And it doesn't matter whether that person is succeeding in a business context or in a relationship context. It doesn't matter what the environment is. The fundamental lessons or laws for succeeding are very, very basic. So if we're looking for the ultimate success formula, the very first thing we'd have is you'd have to know what you want, which we call know your outcome. If you're going to succeed at anything, it's hard to succeed, hard to hit a target when you don't know what it is. And as simplistic as this sounds, do most people really know what they want? What do you think, yes or no? At least not consciously they don't, right? And so it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve what you want when you haven't defined it. But this is going to become a question we're going to want you to ask yourself a lot. What is my outcome in this situation? I even have a time management system that I developed. It's really a life management system, which we call OPA, because the first O stands for what's my outcome. Because you can come up with a question like, what should I do? And you're going to end up with a long list. But as you do all these things, what will happen is you can cross everything off your list and still be unfulfilled and not really achieve anything that matters. So you'll say, what's my outcome first? Then you begin to decide what you need to do to get the outcome. So in this case, we want to say, what's your outcome? You want to make it a habit to ask this question a lot. You're in the middle of a conversation. Stop yourself if it seems to be going nowhere and say, what's my outcome here? Do I want to connect? Do I want to influence this person? Do I want to learn something? What's your outcome? For example, how many of you have ever been caught up in an argument and you even forgot what you're arguing for, but you knew you had to win? How many been there? Say aye. Okay, if in the middle of that argument you were to ask yourself the question, what's my outcome here? I guarantee you your brain would say, well, my outcome is not to fight, my outcome is to resolve this. And as you get clear on what your real target is, your behavior will change automatically. So very, very few people know what they want. And the more clear you can get about what you want, the more you can really achieve. So you might write underneath this as a subset of number one, still number one, just write clarity is power. Clarity is power. The more clear you can become about what it is you really want, the more power you're going to have. Because your brain is like a servo mechanism in a bomb, as an example. When they send a missile out, it has a servo mechanism. It knows what the target is. And when the target moves, it follows it. Well, your brain is very similar. When you decide exactly what it is you want, you start picking up information that you never would have picked up before consciously. For example, have you ever bought a particular car maybe, or maybe a certain outfit, and then all of a sudden you see that car or outfit everywhere? How many of you have had that experience? Say aye. Well, was that car outfit already around you all the time? Yeah, but you didn't notice it because there's a portion of your brain that is responsible for one thing, and that is screening out 99% of what you see, hear, and feel in life. Because if you were to notice everything that's going on in this room right now, you go stark raving mad. But most of you don't. You pay attention to a small number of things. If you could right now notice what? Millions of things. You could notice my voice. You could listen to what I'm saying. You could notice what's going on in the background, the screens. You could hear the air conditioning. You could smell your neighbor off to all that jumping up and down and notice that. Right? You could feel maybe a little sweat trickling across your chest or whatever was going on after all that jumping up and down. You could feel the blood maybe vibrating or circulating through your left eardrum. But you don't think about those things. So maybe I mention them or something triggers it. So this part of our brain that's responsible for deleting most of our thoughts and most of the things that are going on around us, that part of our brain, when it knows what you want, it makes you notice those things. You suddenly see that car because it's important. It's called the reticular activating system. You don't have to write all that down. For short, it's called RAS. The reticular activating system tells your brain what to pay attention to. So when you say, this is what I really want, now anything that relates to that you wouldn't have noticed before will start popping up into your focus. And a lot of times people say, it's amazing. I decided this and it was kind of synchronicity. These things started popping up. Well, these things were probably around you before, but you never noticed them because you hadn't decided your outcome. Now, when you know your outcome, you're ahead of 95% of the population. But that's not enough. The second thing you got to know is a lot of times you know your outcome, but you lose your drive. You want something, but you forget the most important thing, which is know why you want it. Know why you want it. You got to know the purpose. In our OPA training system, when people are managing their lives, we have them ask, what's my outcome? And then why do I want this? Because any person successful, really successful, knows exactly what they want and they know why. The reason you got to know why is, remember I said yesterday, reasons come first, answers come second. If you get enough reasons, You can get a big enough why, you can figure out how to do about anything, but you got to have purpose because purpose provides drive. Now, if you know what you want and you know why, you're light years ahead of most of the population, but you got to go the step that most people seem to avoid, and that is you got to take massive what? That's right, and a key word there is massive. Massive action can be a cure-all when you know what you're after and you know why you want it. Because when you know what you're after, when you take action, you won't just be expending energy. You'll be moving yourself in a direction towards something you really, really want. And by the way, last night we called taking massive action personal what? Power, which means the ability to take action. And what stops people from taking action? Primarily what? Fear. And the way you get over that fear is, what do you think is the number one fear most people have? Failure. And the reason is they feel if they fail, they won't be loved. They'll be rejected. They'll be hurt. They'll be judged. So what they really are afraid of is losing love. And they think that this rejection, or I should say this failure, will lead to that rejection or loss of love. The truth of the matter is you can't fail unless you don't try. If you try something that doesn't work, you just learn from it, and that'll make you better the next time you go about it. Now, if you know your outcome, know why you want it, and take massive action, you're now in the most small percentile of people on the planet. So what's the next step, though? Well, you can take a lot of action and get caught up in a pattern. Like become so determined that you became like tunnel vision, like, I know this is going to work. And so you keep running east looking for a sunset with total certainty and a lot of belief, high standards, still doesn't work. So what you have to be able to do to succeed so you don't get caught up in some old pattern is you got to know what you're getting. Know what you are. Know what you're getting. The word we use for this, as for short, is we call it sensory acuity. Sensory acuity is the idea that you want to become acutely sensitive to whether what you're doing is working or not. You don't want to just say, okay, I know what I want, I know why I want it, and I'm just going to make it happen. This is how I'm going to do it. And you keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it, doing something that doesn't work. And people do this all the time, right? Do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's called insanity. You can't do the same thing again and again, expect a different result when you can see it doesn't get the result. But we get caught up in our patterns. So we want to get really sensitized, acutely sensitized, sensory acuity, to whether what we're doing is working or not. And by the way, sensory acuity is really the measure of a person's intelligence. What I mean by that is, how do we measure intelligence? Intelligence is a measure of the number and quality of distinctions you have in a given situation. Like, for example, if you talk to Eskimos, that's actually not the politically correct term anymore, I guess it's Inouye. If you talk to an Inouye, what we formerly called Eskimos, you'd find out that Inouye have more than a dozen words for the word snow. More than a dozen. Now, I'm from Southern California. Guess how many words I have for snow? One. I don't see any of it. It's called snow, baby. Right? But they got to know what kind of snow. They got to make more refined distinctions to be effective in the world, to get their outcomes. They got to know what kind of snow you can build an igloo out of, what kind of snow you can take your dogs through, what kind of snow you can eat, right? What kind of snow you're going to fall through. So who has more intelligence, who has more power in that snowy environment? The Eskimo or me? Which one? Eskimo, because they have more sensory acuity. They have more refined distinctions about what each of these elements mean versus I just see it as snow. Now, if you took that Eskimo and you stuck him in my car in Los Angeles, then we'd find out that maybe I have a little more intelligence because he might try to steer the thing using the rearview mirror, right? He just doesn't know. So since he doesn't have that acuity, he doesn't have those distinctions, he wouldn't do terribly well there. See, some people, I could hold this up and I could say, what is this? And they'd say, well, it's a cylinder. Other people say, no, that's a blue, white, and black cylinder. Someone else says, no, that's a blue color marker. A few people say, no, that's not just a blue color marker. That is a Pilot super color, bright and wide color marker, and if you get it in your clothes, it'll never come out. Now, which one of those people has more power? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 4, because they have the largest number of distinctions. So now, if you know your outcome, you know why you want it. You got your purpose. You got your drive. You got your A, an OPA. This is outcome, purpose, action. You know the massive action. You're taking action, and you notice if it's working. What happens if you notice it's not working? You're taking action, but it's not getting you closer to your outcome. What's the obvious fifth step? The fifth step is change your approach. Change your approach. If what you're doing, your acuity says, is not working, change it. Now, what if you change your approach and that's still not working? Then what would you do? What would you do? Come on, what would you do? Change it again. Keep yourself in a peak state. Sit up in your chair. Some of you have gone back into that deep hypnotic state of learning, I can see. And what if you tried that and it didn't work? Then what would you do? What if that doesn't work? What do you do? And what if that doesn't work? What do you do? What if that doesn't work? What do you do? What if after all that it still doesn't work? What do you do? And what if you try that and it doesn't work? How many times? Until you find out what works. Do not say to yourself, I've tried everything. That's bull. If you tried everything, you'd have what you want. Well, I haven't tried everything, but I tried millions of things. Millions? Number them, name them. Well, maybe tens of thousands. Tens of thousands? Name 1,000. Well, maybe 100. Name 100. Well, maybe I did these 2 things over and over again that don't work. Okay? But when we start saying, I've tried everything, we tend to incant that, don't we? We make it an incantation, and then we believe it. And since we think we've tried everything, we just give up. It's garbage, not true. Hey, let me ask you a question. How long would you give your average baby to learn how to walk? You know, before you shut them off and didn't let them try anymore. You know, what are you, crazy? My kid's going to keep trying until he or she walks. Ah, magic formula. And when almost everybody in the whole world walks. Okay? So this is the ultimate success formula. It comes down to knowing what you want, why you want it, taking massive action, know if it's working, and simply changing your approach until you get it. That's it. Anyone who succeeds does this. They may not call it Robbins' ultimate success formula, but I guarantee they did it. I mean, corny example. Thomas Edison, these lights in here. Did this guy know his outcome, yes or no? Yes or no? He was absolutely clear without knowing the outcome. He couldn't have built that in a million years. It didn't exist before. He had to decide he wanted to create this result without the use of candles. Did he know why he wanted to do it? You bet. You read his writings, this man had a sense of incredible purpose and drive. Did he take massive action, yes or no? Oh, yes. Tens of thousands of experiments. Did he notice when it wasn't working and learn from it, yes or no? Did he keep changing his approach? That's why right now in this room we don't smell candlelight, right? Now, if you know the old story of him, it was written about him in his early days. He says he's got his best friend with him. He's doing this experiment, and as he's doing it, he creates a small explosion, which shakes the room, scares both of them very, very severely. And then at the end of that, he gets up, and his friend is totally shaken, freaked out. He pulls out his journal, and he starts writing. And his buddy says to him, what's the matter with you? Insane? You almost killed us. So you're going to wait till you have 10,000 failures before you give this stupid idea up? And Edison's response to him was, I didn't have a failure there. He goes, that's your 9,999th failure. He said, no, it's not. He said, I discovered the 9,999th way not to invent the electric light bulb. But I did discover how to create a small explosion, which may be useful in the future somewhere else. Interesting, right? Because he understood what this process was. Hey, did Bruce Springsteen use this? Do you think he just went out and used his gravelly voice and said, hey, baby, born to USA, and everybody went, yeah, you're it, man? Is that what happened? No. What really happened, if you know his story, was that all the agents and people who went to try and book with said, just play the guitar and keep your mouth shut. Your voice is gross sounding. It's gravelly. It's irritating. No one is going to like the stuff. Keep your mouth shut and play the guitar. But he knew what he wanted. He had all the drive you can imagine, knew why he wanted, took massive action, kept changing his approach until he got what he wanted. How about Sly Stallone, Sylvester Stallone, Rocky? Rocky's story is this even, right? But Sly's is too. Sly's a good friend of mine. And when I first met him years ago, he's listening to my tapes and stuff, and he invited me over for dinner. We started talking. And I said, you know, I've heard your story from other people, but I really love to hear it from the horse's mouth. I don't know how much is mythology, you know, urban myth, and how much is true. So he told me his whole story. He said the essence of it, though, was he said he knew his whole life what he wanted to do since he was very, very young. He wanted to be in the movie business, period. I mean, not just TV, movies. And he said why was, for him, it was a chance to have people not only escape, but to inspire people. And by the way, that drive is what made most of his movies, inspire people to what they're capable of, to overcome unbelievable obstacles, because in his own life he felt like he did that. When he was born, he was pulled out by the forceps. That's why he looked the way he did. That's why he talked the way he did. And he said, so I really want to do that. And he said, I knew why I wanted to do it, and I wasn't willing to settle for anything else. And he said, what happened was I went out to try and get jobs, and it's not like I went, hey, Adrian. They went, you're a star. It didn't work out real well. They looked at me and said, hey, you're stupid looking. Do something else. You know, what is it talking like this? There's no place for you in that stuff. You're never going to be a star in the movies. You're insane. No one's going to want to listen to somebody who looks dopey and talks out of the side of their mouth, right? And he got no after no after no after no. He said, I was thrown out more than 1,500 times of agents' offices in New York. I said, there aren't 1,500 agents in New York. He said, I know. I've been to them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. He said, remember one guy, I went in there, and I got in there at 4 o'clock, and he wouldn't see me, so I stayed there, and I would not leave. And I stayed overnight. They came back the next morning. I was still sitting there. He said, that's how I got my first job. The guy said, fine, come in here. And he sat down, and he went through this, and he gave me my first movie. I said, oh, really? I thought Rocky was your first movie. He said, no, this other movie, I'd never heard of it. I said, well, what character did you play? He said, well, I was in it for about 20 seconds. I was a thug that somebody beat up. He said, because they made me feel like, people hate your guts. You getting beat up will be a good thing. And he did like 3 movies like that. Never got anything. Kept going out. Rejection, rejection, rejection. So finally he realized it wasn't working. So he changed his approach. He said, I was starving, by the way. He said, I couldn't pay for even to have heat in my apartment. My wife was screaming at me every day to go get a job. I said, well, why didn't you? He said, because I knew that if I got a job, he said, I'd get seduced back and I'd lose my hunger. He said, I knew that the only way I could do this is if it was the only choice, if I burned all other bridges. Because if I did a normal job, pretty soon I'd be caught up in that rhythm and that stuff, and I'd feel okay about my life, and I feel like my dream would just gradually disappear. And he said, I wanted to keep that hunger. That hunger was the only thing I thought was my advantage. He said, but my wife didn't understand that at all. And he said, we'd have these vicious fights, and he said it was freezing. So I was broke, we had no money, and he said, so I finally went to the public library one day because it was warm. He said, I didn't want to read anything. He says, I went in, New York Public Library. He said, I was hanging out there, and I sat down in this chair, and somebody left a book there. And he said, I looked down at this book, and it were the poems of Edgar Allan, stories of Edgar Allan Poe. And he said, so I started reading it, and he said, I got totally into Edgar Allan Poe. And he said, I know everything about it. And he goes on for another 20 minutes telling me about Edgar Allan Poe. He knows everything, how he died, what it was about, what really happened. And I said, well, what did Poe do for you? He said, Poe got me out of myself. He got me to think about how I could touch other people and not worry about myself so much. And he said, it made me decide to become a writer. I said, just imagine Rocky the writer, right? And he said, so I tried to write a bunch of screenplays. Nothing worked, nothing worked. I was totally broke. He said, I didn't even have $50. And he said, and finally, he said, I sold a script. It was called Paradise Alley. He said, it's a movie I made many years later, but I sold it. And he said, I sold it for $100. He said, but $100 was a ton of money, man. I was so thrilled. I thought, I'm on my way. But it never led to anything. And he said, so finally, he said, I kept going and going and going. He said, finally, we were so broke. He said, I hawked my wife's jewelry. He said, Tony, there's some things in life you should never do. He said, that was basically the end of our relationship. She hated my guts so much. He said, now we were so broke, we had nothing, no food, no money. And he said, the one thing I loved most in the world was my dog. He said, I love my dog because he gave me unconditional love, unlike my wife. And he said, so what happened was, though, we were so broke that to survive, I couldn't even feed my dog. So I went to a liquor store. He said, it was the lowest day of my life. And I stood outside the liquor store trying to sell my dog to strangers. He said, I tried to sell my dog for $50. And he said that finally this one guy negotiated with me and bought my dog for me, my best friend on earth, for $25. He said, I walked away from there and I cried. He said, it was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. He said, 2 weeks later, I'm watching a fight between Muhammad Ali and Wepner, this white guy that's getting bludgeoned but just keeps on coming even though he gets the hell beat out of him. And he said, I got an idea. He said, as soon as the fight ended, I started writing. He said, I wrote for 20 straight hours. I did not sleep. I wrote the entire movie in 20 hours straight. Right then. Saw the fight, wrote the movie. Whole thing, done. He said, I was shaking at the end. I was so excited. He said, I really knew, man. I knew what I wanted. I knew why I wanted it. He said, just like you teach that formula. He said, but I said, man, I took the action. Now it's time to deliver. And so he said, I went out and started trying to sell it to agents. And they all would read it, and they'd say, this is predictable. This is stupid. This is sappy. He said, I wrote down all the things they said, and I read them the night of the Oscars when we won. Right? He said, it was really good, right? The greatest revenge is massive success. And he said, so what happened was, he said, I kept going, trying to sell it, nobody going, I'm broke, I'm starving. He said, finally, I meet these guys, they read it, and they believe in the script, and they love it. And they offer me $125,000 for my script. I said, oh my God, you must have been out of your mind. He said, I was. I said, just one thing though, guys, you got a deal based on one thing. And they said, what's that? He said, I got a star in it. They went, pfft. What are you talking about? You're a writer. He said, no, I'm an actor. I said, no, you're a writer. He said, no, I'm an actor. That is my story, and I'm Rocky. He said, I got to play it. I got to be the head person. I got to be the starring role. And they said, there's no way. We're not going to pay you $125,000, take some no name and stick you in that and throw our money away. We need a star, And they wanted to have Ryan O'Neal play Rocky, to give you a picture. Can you imagine? That's who they picked, right? And so he said, no way, Ryan O'Neal isn't Rocky, I'm Rocky. Went through this whole thing, right? They finally, they said, well, take it or leave it. He said, I left the room. I said, if that's what you believe, you don't get my script. And he left. Here's a man with no money, none, totally broke, offered $125,000 more money he'd seen in his lifetime, and he walked away because he knew his real what? Knew his real what? And why he wanted it. He was committed to it. So he said they called him a few weeks later, and they came and brought him back, and they offered him $250,000 not to star in his own movie. He turned it down, $250,000. They came back, their final offer was $325,000. They wanted this thing. He said, not without me, and they said no. They finally compromised, and they gave him $35,000 and points in the movie, because they said, if this is going to happen, then you're going to take the risk with us. And the bottom line is, we don't think it'll work, but at least we won't spend a bunch of money on you. And then they only spent $1 million to make Rocky, and it grossed $200 million at the time. I mean, it was done pretty well. But what's interesting about this is, I said, what'd you do? I mean, even $35,000, it's not $250,000. That's a lot of money when you don't have 25 bucks. I said, what's the first thing you did? I figured you went out and partied or something. He said, I went to that liquor store for 3 straight days and hoped that the man who had my dog frequented the store. He said, because I want to buy back my dog. I thought that was so cool, right? That was really cool. I said, what happened? He said, third day I was there, this guy walks by, and I see him, and I can't believe it, and there's my dog. And I looked at him, and I said, sir, remember me? And he said, it had been about a month and a half by the time this had all come about. And he said, remember me? You know, I'm the guy that sold you the dog. And I goes, yeah, I love the dog. He said, well, look. He said, I was so broke, I was starving. He's my best friend. I'm sure you love him too, but I got to have him black. Please, I beg of you. He said, I'll pay you $100 for the dog. I know you paid me $25, but I'll give you $100. And the man said, absolutely not. No way. He's my dog now. You can't buy him back, right? And Sly said, you know, Tony, you know, he said, know your outcome. I said, yeah. He said, I knew it. And he said, I kept changing my approach. So I went, $500 for the dog. The guy said, absolutely no way. He said, $1,000 for my dog. The guy said, no amount of money on earth is ever going to get this dog for you. I said, what'd you do? He said, I knew my outcome, right? Because he listened to these tapes, kept to him. He said, I decided to take massive action. He said, I got my dog. I just kept changing my approach, so I got it. I said, what'd it cost you? $15,000 and a part in Rocky. The guy's in Rocky. You know that dog in Rocky, Butt Kiss? That's Sly's real dog, right? That's the dog. He bought him back. So he put his dog in the movie, and he put the guy in the movie and paid $15,000 while he had $35,000. Isn't that pretty cool? Pretty awesome. So there's always a way if you're committed. Just got to keep changing your approach. How many of you have ever said, I want to change something? Like, I want to lose weight. I wanted this. I wanted that. And you started to create change only to go back to where you were. How many have done this? Say, I want to show you how to create lasting change. Because anybody can change for the moment. But lasting change is what you're really after. Really, there are 3 beliefs you have to have first to have lasting change. And then there are 3 steps you have to take. First, let's do the 3 beliefs, okay? The first belief you must have to have lasting change is that change is a must and not a should. So you have to believe that something must change, not that something should change. If someone says, you know, I really should go on a diet, I go, ain't gonna happen. But I know, should never happens. Should you do when it's convenient. Should is not consistent. Musts are the things we find a way to do because we go, it is a must. We take it to a different level of consequence in our bodies and our minds and our emotions and our spirits. So if there's something you haven't changed and you keep thinking about it but still hasn't changed, I guarantee you one of these or more of these 3 beliefs is missing. First one that's probably likely is you really think you should change, but it's not a total absolute must in your gut. Now, some people really is. They think, well, this weight must come off. You know, something must be done. You know, about our environment. We're destroying our environment. Or something must be done about racism. It's disgusting. But see, that's not enough to get you to follow through by itself. You have to have a second belief. And that second core belief has got to be, I must change it. Key core belief. Not only that it must change, but I must change it. See, if I think something must be done about racism, that's for somebody else to do. Unless I say, I must do something. Now I'm going to be engaged. Now I'm going to actually do something. Or I might think the weight must come off me, but then I'm going to run to Jenny Craig or someone else to do it for me. And there's nothing wrong with Jenny Craig. She's great as a coach. But if Jenny Craig's the one doing it for you, or Tony Robbins the one doing it for you, then I get the muscle and you don't. So I'll be stronger and healthier, and you'll be okay for a while until you get off on some uncomfortable thing. Then you can blame me or Jenny Craig or someone else why it didn't work. But if you know you're the source, then there's only one place to look, which is in the mirror. So it cannot be based on someone else. It's got to be, it must change, and I must change it. Now, some people believe, okay, this weight must come off, and I know I must be the one to do it. Right? But, or, this environment, something's got to be done. And I know I must do something, but they have a third belief that keeps them from doing it. And that third belief you got to have to do it is, I can change it. I can change it. Why is this one important? Why do you got to believe it's not only change, it's a must, but also, secondly, believe I must change it, and most importantly, I can. Because if you don't believe you can change it, then are you going to put a bunch of energy and effort and force into something you think's not going to work? Of course not. For you to really get the result that you want, you've got to believe you can. So very often people go, yeah, this weight must come off. I know I must do it, but I can't. Why? They'll say, I tried everything, right? I've tried millions of things. I've tried it all. You've not tried it all. You've not tried everything, or you would have gotten results. But we start telling ourselves these stories, and we start believing those incantations. Now, one of the reasons they believe they can't do it is because they never have before. So I want to give you a core belief to write down that's really, really important. And that is this: the past does not equal the future. The past does not equal the future. The past does not equal the future. See, so often people say, I can't do this. Well, it's because they haven't done it before, or they've never done it, or they think they've tried everything. Well, you haven't tried everything. And if you try to drive in the future using a rear view mirror to guide yourself, I got news for you, you're going to crash. You have to be able to look forward and create what you want, even if you've never been able to do it before. If you just tried it and it didn't work, this moment is new. Something about you is new. You made a new distinction, something you may be unaware of. Maybe the environment's changed. Maybe you just need to change your approach. But you got to believe that you can, because the only reason to say you can't is you think you've tried everything, which is a lie, or you believe that it just has never worked before. The past does not equal the future unless you live there. If you live in the past, then I guarantee your future will be the same way. Now, these are just beliefs, but beliefs control our actions. You might want to write down another phrase, and that is, all beliefs carry with them consequences. All beliefs carry with them consequences. Human behavior is belief-driven. Okay? All beliefs carry with them consequences, and human behavior is belief-driven. What does that mean? It simply means that if somebody does something, they got a reason. Even if it may seem insane to you, even if they may not know what the reason is consciously, they got a reason. It's based on something they believe, that by doing this, it'll give them something they need or want unconsciously, some set of feelings they need. That's why people do what they do. So we need to understand what a belief is. Maybe you should write down a definition of a belief as well, because people make a belief into a thing, and all a belief is a feeling. A belief is a feeling. That's all it is, right? A belief is a feeling of certainty. That's all a belief is. A belief is a feeling of certainty about what something means. A belief is nothing but a feeling of certainty about what something means. Again, jot it down. A belief is nothing but a feeling of certainty about what something means. So when you say, I believe this, you're saying, I'm certain about this. If you say, Tony, I believe I'm an intelligent person, what you're saying is, Tony, I feel what? I feel what? Certain that I'm an intelligent person, okay? That's all a belief is. Now, let me give you a metaphor. What's the difference between an idea and a belief? Well, you can have an idea that the world is flat, but not believe it, not feel certain that the world is flat. Or you can have a belief that the world is round and be certain the world is round. Let me give you a metaphor for it. Here's the difference between an idea and a belief. An idea is like a tabletop with no legs. Now, what's the problem with the tabletop with no legs? If you push against it, what's it going to do? Fall down. There's nothing to hold it up. There's nothing to make it solid or certain. What a belief is a tabletop with legs underneath it to support it. So let me give you an example. Let's take an idea like, I'm sexy. Everybody say, I'm sexy. Go ahead. Oh, come on. Say it again like you mean it. Oh, come on. One more time. Okay, great. Raise your hand if what you said just now was not an idea. It wasn't just a phrase. You really believe what you just said, that you're sexy. Raise your hand if you really believe you're sexy. Keep your hands up if you really believe you're sexy. There is no question in your mind. You are flat sexy. That's just how it is. Okay? Okay, good. All right. All right. Now, drop your hand. Raise your hand if you are not sexy. If you are not sexy. Okay, where the hell are the rest of you people? Well, maybe I'm sexy, maybe I'm not. Okay? So those who know they're sexy, and no one can convince you otherwise, raise your hand. If you absolutely know you're sexy, no one can convince you otherwise. You flat know you're sexy. That's just how it is. Facts are facts. Okay, baby? All right? All right, let's do an example. How about this lady right here? Yes, ma'am. Give her a microphone. What's your name, my dear?
Angela.
Angela. Angela, stand up so we can see if we agree with you. No, just kidding. Just kidding, just kidding. Now, Angela, tell me something. You believe, go ahead and stand up, seriously. You believe you're sexy, is that right?
Yes.
You're certain you're sexy, is that right?
Yes.
Great. How do you know you're sexy? Do you have a few references?
More than a few.
More than a few. So what she's telling us is she's got some legs under her table.
Legs, anyhow.
Right? And those legs are known as references or reference experiences. She's had certain experiences in life that when she's thought about them a long time ago, she used those to back up the belief that says, I'm sexy. And now she's certain. It's solid. She may not even remember what those legs are anymore. She just believes she's sexy. But the way she got herself to believe it is she noticed certain things and assembled them as a way to back up that thought. Now she doesn't have to think about the legs. She just knows. So what are some of your references? Seriously, how do you know you're sexy?
Confidence.
Confidence. What gives you confidence?
Inner strength. Experience.
Experience. So that's what references are. What kind of experience makes you know you're sexy?
How I've handled myself in tough situations.
That's how you know you're sexy?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what built the confidence.
What's a tough situation?
Right off the bat, I think of a work situation, maybe a political situation at work that I handled gracefully.
And so that meant you were sexy because you handled a work situation gracefully?
That's what created the confidence that makes me feel sexy.
Oh, okay. So, but I'm asking you what makes you feel sexy. What makes you confident that you're sexy, not confident you can handle a work situation. That was a good try, but that's not quite what we're going for. Okay.
Okay, I've been told.
Okay, you've been told. She's been told, ladies and gentlemen. By men?
Yes.
Okay. Has this happened more than once in your life?
Yes.
So she has many experiences of men telling her sexy. Have men ever lied to you before, though?
Yes.
Just kidding.
But not about the sexy part.
Oh, not about the sexy part. Okay, good. I agree with you. That's why I picked you. Now, so you've had men tell you. How else do you know you're sexy?
I feel it.
Okay, what makes you feel it? What experiences make you feel like you're sexy?
Working out.
Working out. So she works out, she looks at her body, and she compares it to references of women that in the culture have been promoted as attractive. And she compares it and says, yeah, I'm sexy. How many followers? I want you to notice most of us don't even know why we believe what we believe anymore. Because what's happened is the legs, we don't look down the legs, we look at the tabletop. And sometimes we develop beliefs that don't support us. In her case, this is an empowering belief. Have you ever been driving down the street and had a guy like honk his horn, like point at you? No? Are you sure? He was telling you to move, basically, was what I was going to tell you.
It was a police officer.
As a police officer, very good. So the point of the matter is she's built enough references that she knows she's sexy. Could you have taken these same references, like men telling her she's sexy, and use it to back up a different belief, that men are scum and they'll say anything to get what they want? Could you? Some women are going, that's right. Okay? The truth of the matter is, here's the point. Experience is no guarantee of an empowering belief system. There are many very sexy people that don't feel very sexy. Because when they see the same evidence she sees or hears or feels, they discount it and they use it to back up a different belief, which is people are just being nice to me, or they're trying to manipulate me, or whatever. It's really important to realize this, because lots of time people have experiences you would think would give them a good belief, but they've not assembled them into a good belief. She has. Give her a hand. Thank you very much for playing. Oh, a real hand. Come on, for God's sake, she's sexy. Oh, yes. All right, now, so I want you to get also, for example, I want you to think about something for a moment. How many of you have references? I'm not saying you believe this, but you have experiences. Now, by the way, references can be things you've experienced, things you've read about, things people have told you, or even things you've imagined. Can you imagine enough things that you're certain how things are? Like make up something in your head and then find out later you were dead wrong? How many have ever done this? Say aye. Okay, so references are not just experiences from the past. There are things you can make up, read about, etc. So how many of you have experiences, references, that if you wanted to, could back up the idea that people are basically mean and harsh, and if you give them half a chance, they'll rip you off? I'm not saying you believe that, but how many have plenty of experiences, if you wanted to, that could back up that belief? Raise your hand, say aye. How many of you have plenty of references to back up the opposite belief, if you wanted to, the belief that says that people really are loving and caring, and if you really care about them, they'll care about you? How many have references to back that up? Say aye. Okay, then the question is, which one is true? Nope. Whichever one you assemble is what's going to be true for you. See, whatever you line up, because once you get certain about something, that's all you'll notice. That's all you'll see. Take my test right now. Look around the room as fast as you can, and look everywhere you can and see everything you can see that's brown, as fast as you can. Anything that's brown, brown. Look everywhere to find brown. Look behind you, look around, I'm going to give you a test. Brown. Anything else that's brown, look for brown. Quick, look for brown. Okay, close your eyes. Now with your eyes closed, now tell me everything you saw in the room that's blue. Ah. Raise your hand if you got a lot more brown in your head than blue right now. Raise your hand. Say aye. Okay, open your eyes now. Look for blue. Look for blue. Everywhere you can look for blue. Quick, look for blue. Look for blue. Look for blue. Anywhere you can find blue, look for it. Look for it. Look around you. How many see a lot more blue this time? If you do, say aye. Why? That's right. Here's a little clue in life. In life, you get what you look for. Seek and you shall find. The problem is if you're looking for something lousy, you'll find it. Many of you saw something that was beige and you called it brown just so you could feel successful. Right? So what happens is, if you're looking for something bad, even if it's not there, you'll shade it. If you're looking for something good, you'll shade it to get what it is that you think you want. So I want you to be clear about this, because this process is so important. So once you develop a belief, it determines what you look for. So now, let's talk about what are the 3 steps. These are the 3 beliefs. It must change, I must change it, I can change it. What are the actual 3 steps to creating change? Here's the first step. You want to create lasting change in yourself or someone else. This is always step 1. If you tried and failed to create change, this is the thing you didn't have enough of, and it's called leverage. Leverage. What is leverage? Well, leverage is when a person in their mind, in their body, in their emotion, in their nervous system, when they link up, that not changing, like failing to change right now, will mean unbearable, immediate, devastating levels of pain. I guarantee you they'll find a way to change. How many follow this? Like, what if you said, I'm really depressed, and I put a gun to your head and said, get happy quick or I'm going to blow your brains out? How many think you might be able to find a way to get happy rapidly? Let me see your hands. Whereas for years you were sitting on a therapist's couch and you couldn't handle it. The only difference is I brought more what to the table? Leverage, greater consequence. The reason we don't change is, on the one hand, we want to change because we're not thoroughly happy. But on the other hand, we're afraid changing itself might be painful, or we might go through that whole process and it still might not work, and then we'd be disappointed and that feel even worse. So the reason we don't change is we think change equals pain. The reason we do change, and when we see not changing, is more painful than anything else. So to get leverage, you want to accomplish 2 things. You want to get the person you're wanting to change, whether it be yourself or someone else, to associate. Associate means not just intellectualize. It's like intellectually you may know chocolate's not good for you, but that's not going to change your behavior until we mix it with tuna casserole in your nervous system. When it's in your gut, now your body will respond. When it's in your head, it's intellectual. So when I say associate, think about association means something you feel in your nervous system rather than something you understand intellectually. How many follow that? Say I. So to get leverage, you want someone to associate, feel in their gut that not changing equals massive, here's the other key word, immediate, unbearable levels of pain. So, to get someone to change, if you've tried everything and it doesn't work, you need more leverage. Get yourself or that person you're working with, whoever you're trying to create change with, to associate that if I don't change, it's going to mean massive, immediate, unbearable levels of pain. Some key words there, massive. Another key word, immediate. You might say, you know what, if I keep smoking, I'll probably get cancer. You know what the problem with that is? It's not immediate. It's way off in the future, in the distance. Remember when you made those pictures in your head last night, and I had you bring the picture closer? Did it intensify the way you felt about it, yes or no? So when you put it further away, almost didn't have much effect, did it? Well, when something is thought of as to be way off in the future, even if it's bad, it doesn't give us enough leverage to change. When it's immediate, that's when it gets us to change. Now, people don't want to change just for painful reasons, so the other form of leverage is this. You want to get this person to associate, which means in their gut, not in their intellect, that changing now, to change now, equals massive, extraordinary, and immediate levels of what, guys? Pleasure. See, when you link up in your brain, changing is pleasurable and not changing is ultimate pain, the person will find the way. Write this in your notes somewhere. Change is never a matter of ability. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation. Another word for that is leverage. Change is never a matter of ability. Change is always a matter of motivation. When someone has enough reasons, they will flat change, period. But you got to get enough leverage. And I'll tell you how we keep ourselves from getting leverage. We use words that soften what we're doing. Like we say, well, I'm a bit overweight, or I'm a little bit, robust, or, I'm round, in big places and stuff. No, you're fat is what you are, okay? Okay? And you got to call a spade. Because as long as you say, well, I'm kind of, a little smidge overweight, you're never going to do it. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't care if you're overweight. I don't judge you. I care about you. I don't want your heart to be working 20 times harder than it needs to be and have you die a young death. I don't care about how you look. That's your business. But if you're overweight, the reason you're overweight is you don't give yourself enough pain for it. You do softeners because you don't want to feel bad about yourself because you think you've tried everything. So I've tried everything, nothing's worked, so I just got to adjust to this. So I want you to get it. You got to tell yourself the truth. I'm telling you this as a friend. I'm not telling you this from judgment. And by the way, do we all do this at different levels, yes or no? I mean, it's the Jerry Springer show. It's not like or people say, well, you should have seen what I used to be like. Oh, because you were a pig before, and now you're a little bit better. You're a small pig, it's okay. Right? And by the way, this isn't just fat. We do this with finances, right? We do this with drugs. We do this with relationships that don't serve us. You got to blindly tell yourself the truth. And that's painful, but that pain will serve you because it will move you. It's like Stallone. If he'd gone off and made himself feel good, he would have lost his hunger and drive. So that's why he didn't take on another job. He stayed there in the pain so he'd have to be driven forward. How many follow that? Say aye. But you know what most of us do? The minute we get a little pain, we want to immediately get rid of it. So we drink something, we eat something, we smoke something, we watch something to take away the pain of the moment. But when you take away the pain, you take away the drive to change. And so now change is not a must, it's a should. And so you keep on feeling bad about yourself, never getting what you really deserve. Whether it be the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotion that you deserve. So you got to be honest with yourself. How many follow this? Say aye. You got to not only be honest, you got to pour it on a little bit and get enough drive. It's uncomfortable. But that discomfort will give you the leverage to really finally do something that is lasting. Okay? Really, 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 really critical here. By the way, think of a change in your own life, or maybe someone you know, that was really hard for you to make. Like, really hard. You kept trying to change, never followed through, and finally one day, wham, you said, that's it, no more, never again, it's over. That's the day you got enough leverage. Now, you don't want to wait for life to have to do that to you. You want to be conscious about it. You want to be direct about it so you get what you deserve. That's what you really have to do. How many have ever done this in a relationship? You're in a relationship, it's a terrible relationship, but you keep rationalizing it. Well, it used to be good. It'll be good again. Because see, if the present is painful, you can always escape to the past. If the past is painful, you can always make up a future that's better. Because no one really knows about the future, so you can make stuff up. And as you make it up, it's a reference that makes you more certain it'll be okay, and you kind of stay where you are. How many of you got in a relationship at one point where you finally said, I've had it, it was painful in the past, it's painful in the present, it's going to be painful in the future, I am out of here. And you got enough leverage. How many have done this? Say I. But until you were honest with yourself that way, you hung out in numbness. See, most people live in a world that I call no man's land. They're in a place where they're not really happy, but they're not unhappy enough to do anything about it. And that's the worst possible place you can be. That's being in a rut. The second step to creating lasting change is you must interrupt the limiting pattern. Step 2 is you must interrupt the limiting pattern or the disempowering pattern. You must interrupt it. You must scramble it. You might write the word scramble it. If you break a pattern enough, again and again and again and again and again, pretty soon your body can't get back into it anymore. Think of it this way. Think of it as being like, how many of you listen to your music on compact discs, on CDs? Say I. So when you listen to a CD, how come every time you listen to that CD, you hear the same music? Well, the answer is because even though you can't see it, on that disc is cut a pattern. It's cut right into it. So when the laser goes across it, it's the same pattern, plays the same music. Well, what if you're listening to a CD in your head, mentally? You have this set of beliefs you have already, a CD you're already listening to as a metaphor. And I take a new belief, a new CD, and try and jam it on top of the one that's already playing. Is that going to work, yes or no? Yes or no? So the only way to create lasting change is to interrupt the pattern. I got to take out the CD you got. I got to take out a needle and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across that thing till I break the pattern so much, I scramble it up so much, it'll never play the same way again. Now you try to put it in there, it doesn't feel good. So now you're open to something new, and now I can give you a new pattern. So to create lasting change, you've got to get leverage, but you've also got to first interrupt the old pattern before you can create a new pattern. And I'll give you a simple example you've probably experienced in your life. You ever been in a conversation that's really important to you? You're really into it. You talk along with somebody, and somebody over here asks you some stupid question that has nothing whatsoever to do with what you're talking about. You say, what? What are you talking about? And they tell you, and you, oh, and you answer their question, and now you come back to what you're talking about, and what happened? Come on, what happened? It's gone. How many have had this happen? Say aye. How many have had your pattern broken so strongly that even though this thing was important, you never figured out what it was and got back to it again? How many have had that happen? Say aye. So pattern reps are powerful. I'll give you an example. I used to bite my fingernails down to the quick when I was a kid. I mean, down to where they'd bleed. And I hated it, but I'd still do it. It was like something I was just trained to do with my body. And so I kept trying to change it. Trying how to tell you it was a should. Right? I try. Try doesn't happen. So finally one day, I'm a young man, I'm in business, and I'm marketing this product or service to this particular woman who's the head of this company. And as I'm talking to her, I'm hoping to make a larger sale because this lady is magnificent. I'm thinking this could be a really important business relationship, right? And so we're developing a really great rapport, and she seems to really like me, and I really like her, and the relationship's starting to get fun and playful, and everything's great. And now we're coming back to the end, and we're going to close the deal, the business part of the deal, and I'm hoping to close an additional deal later on. And so as we put this thing across, and I hand her the paper to sign, as I do it, she suddenly grabs my hand. And I look at her, and she grabs my hand, and she goes, what is this? And she looks at my fingers, and they're all like red on the end, you know, from blood, where they bled and stuff and dried up, and it's really gross looking, right? She goes, what is this? What happened to you? I said, well, and I bite my fingernails. She took my hand, and she just shoved it aside, and she goes, I can't do business with you. I said, what? She goes, I can't do business with somebody who doesn't even have enough self-discipline not to bite their own fingernails. She goes, I'm out of here, and she got up and left. What an unfeeling person. But then after a while, I started thinking, God, she's right. And that provided me with enough what? Physical pain didn't do it. Loss of love, that'll do it. Embarrassment, that'll do it. That gave me leverage. But then, after I did it, I did something called a swish pattern. Some of you are familiar with, I've written about in my books. Very effective pattern. And it's a conditioning pattern. So I did that, but I remember 2 days later, I'm in a movie, and as I'm in the movie, I'm sitting there, and as I do, I found my fingers in my mouth. Now, the good news is I noticed they're in my mouth. So instead of going, oh my God, this doesn't work, it's a failure, I went, oh cool, I realized that I caught it. So I did about 25 more swish patterns right there in the movie, and I've never touched my fingernails since. But the secret is I had to interrupt the pattern besides getting the leverage. Right? So that process is what we're talking about here. Let me give you an example. I remember working with a man one time, and he told me, he always smoked cigarettes, and I knew him really well, and I said, listen, I can help you with that. And he goes, I don't want to change. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to make you change. One day he comes back, and he's not smoking anymore. I said, what happened? He said, it's amazing, Tony. He said, I'll never smoke again as long as I live. He said he was sitting here in his library, reading the newspaper, and smoking a cigarette. And as he's reading the newspaper, smoking the cigarette, in walks waddles in his 5-year-old daughter, who's just totally precious. And he loves her more than anything. And she's crying hysterically. He goes, honey, what's the matter? He puts the paper down, still holding the cigarette. He says, honey, what's the matter? What's the matter? And she goes, Daddy, I don't want you to die. He goes, honey, I'm not going to die. What are you talking about? Yes, you are, Daddy. He goes, no, I'm not going to die. What do you mean? She points at the cigarette. And he looks at the cigarette, and he looks at her, and he says, oh, honey, I'm not going to die. That's nothing to worry about. She goes, yes, you are, Daddy. And I don't want you to, because I wanted you to be there when I got married. She starts crying hysterically. Right? In one fell swoop, 2 steps happen. Massive what? And a massive interruption in his pattern. See, he's willing to go through the physical pain himself, but he's not willing to hurt his daughter. Many of us will do more for others we care about than we'll even do for ourselves. For many, that'll be greater leverage than just you. But if you do something that creates leverage and interrupts the pattern, you got something that's really, really effective. Or I'll give you a different example. One of the first times I ever did a seminar in other languages, now I do, like my university, we have 7 languages translated simultaneously. The first time I went to a foreign country was local. I went up to Canada, and I went up to Montreal, and I was sponsored there by a company in the area. And I didn't know what it was like to talk to a group like that, so I worked really hard, because if you've been to Montreal, you know they're quite sensitive about the French language and against the English language. So I don't know any French, so I worked hard the night before and memorized the paragraph in French to introduce myself in. They all got headsets on, about 2/3 of the audience. And then I get up and I start speaking in French, which blew them away for about, 3 or 4 minutes. Then I said, that's all the French I know. Went on. So we had a great time. A couple thousand people, great seminar. People loved it. It was really wonderful, great success. And I learned things like when you tell a joke in a foreign language, what happens when you tell it in English, maybe a third of your audience starts to laugh. The rest of the people are quiet, just staring at you. And then now you're on to something serious, and the other third of the room, 2/3 of the room starts laughing. It's kind of an interesting experience. So at the end of this event, I felt like it was a great success. And one of the people who was part of the company that sponsored me there comes up to me and says it was phenomenal, on, give me all these great compliments. So I thought, okay, they're sincere compliments. It's a great event. And then the person looks at me and says, Mr. Robbins, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to have dinner with us tonight. And the way they did, have you ever had somebody do something where you go, something's up? How many have had that experience, right? You just know, right? It isn't about dinner, obviously. But I thought, what the heck, why not? I want to find out what it is. So I said, sure. They said, okay, be there at X time. They're acting so weird. So that night I get to the restaurant, and there's a private room where this company has taken over the room, and they sit me down in this like horseshoe set of tables, and at the very head is the chairman of the board, who's a very, very famous man in Montreal and very, very wealthy man. And next to him is his wife, and they put me on the other side of him, and then all the rest of the members of the company. He owns many companies, including the company that sponsored me. And so the conversation, dinner's not yet served. They're just, bringing drinks out and so forth. Things are going fine. People are being very warm and very nice. And then all of a sudden, this guy, the chairman of the board, turns across the table to this other man across the table and starts screaming at him 4-letter words and yelling at him and just dressing him down in front of everybody. And I couldn't even believe it. And so finally, I inside of me, I thought, man, this is really, really uncool. I really want to like make a change in this man's physiology because it was really abusive. But I thought, it's not your company, it's not your place, that's not why you're here. I mean, they got to deal with their own situation here. And basically, he used the leverage of his money to be abusive to other people. It became very obvious. It really annoyed me. So I kind of blew it off. We continued to have dinner. And then not 10 minutes later, he turns to his wife in front of everybody, starts screaming at her every kind of four-letter word you can imagine in front of everybody. I couldn't even believe it. Now, my pot is boiling, right? And I'm thinking, this guy needs a major change in physiology, right? And so I'm thinking how I want to do this. And then all of a sudden, he calms down finally, and the whole room is just silent. You know what I mean? After one of those things, everybody's like, looks like beaten down dogs, being quiet, see what's going to happen. And there's one voice in the back, way towards the back part of the table, probably the furthest part of the table is why he probably said it. One of the other executives said that this man's name, the chairman, was Jean. He says, Jean, how are you doing on that anger stuff with your therapist? Right? And Jean goes, well, we've been working on it for years, as you know, and I think we've made some progress, but I'm just that kind of person. And you could see that he had pride in the fact that he could be abusive because it gave him a sense that he was powerful, that he was significant. And so this person said, well, you know, Jean, and the person who said this is the person who invited me to dinner. You start to get the picture? He says, well, you know, Jean, Mr. Robbins is considered to be the best therapist in all of America. He's able to create change in lightning-like speed. Aren't you, Mr. Robbins? All of a sudden, I understood why I was invited to dinner. So he said, oh, no, Mr. Robbins, I would never take up your time at this wonderful dinner. It would be so unfair to you and everything else. He said, but Mr. Robbins, what would you do? And I said, well, you know, you're right, sir. I said, you know, you're not my patient, so, you know, I couldn't work with you. I said, but if you were, I said, what I do is actually train your nervous system to change so it really would. He said, really? How would you do that? That's all the opening I needed. I said, well, I'd say, do you remember what you said to that man over there earlier? He said, no. I said, sure you do. Remember, you were calling those four-letter words, you were saying this, you were saying that. You kind of enjoyed it a little bit, it looked like. He went, well, yes. And I reached out and I went, wham! I hit him as hard as I could in the shoulder. He went, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I'm showing you what I would do if you were my patient, but you're not my patient, so I would never do that, right? He's like, and the people at the table like, right? And I'm looking at him smiling. And as I do this, he doesn't know how to process it because I'm not looking mean. I'm just going, that's what I do if you're my patient, but you're not, so I'd never do that. And he's like, do you ever see people when they're totally confused and they like search every quadrant of their brain? Right? So now what have I done? Massively interrupted his pattern and gotten major what? Leverage. See, you can talk to your blue in the face. That's not going to change this guy. He said, wow, that was painful. I said, that's the idea. So if I was your therapist, that's the kind of thing I do, and I do it enough that you would never do it again, ever. Right? And he's like, oh. He said, yeah, that would be, yeah, I can see that might work. I said, oh, no, it will work. As a matter of fact, remember what you said to your wife? He went, no. And I went, wham! I hit him twice. I was like, stop that! Stop that! So I said, stop what? He said, what do you mean what? That's what you just did. I said, oh, I'm just showing you what I would do if you're my patient, but you're not my patient, so I would never do that. And the people at the table were like, some are going, hit him again, hit him again. True story, no exaggeration. So you didn't really hit him. I really did. If any of you know some of my therapy examples, you know I will do whatever it takes. My job is, you asked for it, you got it. All right, you're going to get it. So this guy now, he's like shaking from this thing. He goes, wow, I can really see how that would work. I said, is there anybody else you've been abusive to recently? He was like, no. So now, what have I done? I got leverage and I've interrupted both of those things. So the last step number 3 is this. Hi. Step number 3 is this. Once you got the leverage, once you interrupt the pattern, third step is you must create an empowering alternative. You must create an empowering alternative. In other words, an alternative pattern. You can't just stop smoking. You got to start doing something else. And what most people do is they stop smoking and start eating. So that's why you got to find an empowering alternative. So create an empowering alternative. I can't just say stop yelling at people, because his yelling at people gives him a sense of certainty that they'll listen to him and that they'll change. How many follow that? So if we just say don't do that, then we've not met the need that he used to get. We want to meet the need more elegantly. If you're smoking, it's probably because you're stressed, and when you smoke, you take deep diaphragmatic breaths, and so you get out of stress. When most people are stressed, they stop breathing, or they breathe very shallowly. When you have very little oxygen, that adds a smidge to your stress. So cigarettes now, while there's a physical addiction, what made it happen initially was it relaxed you. So you don't want to just stop smoking and be stressed. You got to have something else to relax you. So what a lot of people do is they eat tons of food, so the stomach fills up, and all the blood rushes in there, and they start breathing in their diaphragm again. But there are better alternatives. Does that make sense? So you got to come up with an empowering alternative, and once you do it, and reinforce it. Reinforce it. How do you reinforce something? You notice it. You give it pleasure. You acknowledge it. You reward it. So you might want to use the word reward it, and reinforce it or reward it until it becomes habit. Until it becomes habit. So you got to create an empowering alternative, and you got to reinforce it until it becomes habit. What will last, what creates lasting change is when you do something and you're rewarded for it. When you give yourself rewards, you feel happy, you feel proud of yourself, you feel a sense of excitement or freedom or more love. When you get that reinforcement on a regular basis, pretty soon it just becomes who you are. That's what we want to do. And so that's what I did with him. So a year later, so I had him come up with these alternatives, how to communicate. And throughout the night, when we started communicating with somebody who did something right, I caught him doing it right. And I'd say, now, John, I want to say something to you. Do you see Bob's face over here? The way you just interact with him? So you can try and force him to do something or make him fear you, and he'll do a little bit. But people only do so much out of fear. They do the minimum out of fear. But when they love you, when they care about you, when they feel respected by you, they'll do anything for you. This guy really would do anything for you. Look at his face right now. Doesn't that feel better? And I'd make him stop and notice so he wasn't unconscious. And he'd say, honestly, it really does. And he said, Bob, I really do care about you. And these great anchors happened that night where I kept reinforcing him. So he had plenty of alternatives, and he saw it gave him more of what he wanted than the old behavior. So now I come back a year and a half maybe later, and I do the seminar, things go great, and the same guy afterwards says, Mr. Robbins, would you like to come to dinner? And I look at him, and I can't tell if he's, got something or not. So I said, sure. Same restaurant, same room, same everything. Sit down, you table. I'm sitting next to Jean. Sean, it's great to have you back. Everything's warm. Everything's wonderful. He seems really happy. Everybody's great. I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. It all worked, right? And then maybe 15 minutes into sitting there, all of a sudden John comes across and starts screaming at this person against the table. And I can just feel every part of my body going, obviously didn't break the pattern strong enough. I'm going to do it this time. And I just feel my face and body tighten up. And all of a sudden he turns over and goes, gotcha. And everybody, the whole place started laughing. It was a setup. And they all went around the table, and they acknowledged me, and they acknowledged John, and talked about he's never been the same since. His life has never been the same. He's such an incredibly warm and loving man now from that process, just from that piece. Now, whether you're trying to change someone from being mean to nice, or whether you're trying to get rid of addiction, it's the same steps. So, for example, when I first built my career, I'd get on radio and television in Canada, and I launched my career saying, I don't care what your problem is, I'll handle it. So I got all kinds of things. But one of my first therapies ever was a smoking therapy. Now, bear in mind, I'm staying at the Westin Hotel in a place called Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Anybody been there? It's a magnificent place. You've not been there. It's as pretty as any city in the world, I think. And so I'm there, and I'm staying in this hotel, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful. And I'm waiting in my room for my first real major therapy. And it's a smoking therapy. And I look at my watch, and the guy doesn't show up. And I look, he doesn't show up, doesn't show up. So then I think, well, no one knew my face in those days or even knew my name. So maybe he forgot my name and he's at the hotel. So I figure I'll go downstairs to see if he's in the lobby. So as I go out to exit my door of my room, right outside the door is this guy sitting puffing like crazy. So I said, are you Bob? He said, yeah. I said, Bob, what are you doing out here? He goes, I'm having my last cigarette. Now, what does that tell me? That tells me he links pain to stopping smoking, not pain to smoking. As long as he thinks stopping smoking is going to be painful, it's not going to work. How many follow this? We have to change that, what we call neuroassociation. It's a big word. It means what he associates in his nervous system, in his gut, right? Not when he has in his head. In his head, he knows better. But in his gut, his neuroassociations are rigged that stopping smoking is painful. That's why he's never done it before. So he wants me to do this painful thing to him. That won't work. So I think in a moment's notice, I come up with an idea. And I said, come with me. And we don't go to my room. We start walking down the hall. He goes, where are we going? I said, downstairs. He goes, I want to do this in private. I said, we will. Follow me. We get on the elevator, go downstairs. And I haven't been there in about 2 or 3 years. But even 2 or 3 years ago, in this day and age where very few people seem to smoke in public, at the Westin Hotel, they still have a tobacco shop there. And so we go down to this tobacco shop, and as you go in, the smells are everywhere, right? So when people smell the smells, they go into state, right? So this guy's in state, right? He's got his cigarettes back. He's one happy camper. So I said, what brand do you smoke? So he tells me. I said, great. Give me 12 cartons. And the guy looks at me and goes, 12 cartons? I said, yeah, 12 cartons. The guy goes, looks at him, 12 cartons? I said, yeah, pay the man. He's like, pay the man. So he pays him. So now I said, pick him up. So he's got 6 cartons here, 6 cartons here. We're walking down the hall. I'll never forget his face. We get on the elevator. The door closes. He's holding all these cartons of cigarettes. He looks at me and says, you're not going to make me smoke these, are you? I said, now we're making progress. Now he's linking pain to smoking already. How many follow this? Say aye. So we go sit in the room. And a lot of times when you're trying to helping someone make a change, the problem is you're changing a part of them that doesn't need to change, like the part of them that's really great. You need to get them in their smoking state and change that part of them. So I said, go ahead and open all the cartons, pull out all the cigarettes, and unwrap every one and pull one cigarette so it's accessible so you can just grab it real easily. And while you're doing that, tell me why you started smoking. And so he goes, okay. He starts undoing the cartons. As he does, he kind of gets in state. He smells the cigarettes and starts undoing it, and he goes into state, right? And he starts telling me, well, when I started out, I really didn't want to smoke, but all my friends did, and it was like the cool thing to do, and he's going into state, right? And so I said, okay, well, light one up. He looked at me and he went, what do you mean light one up? I came here to stop. I said, I know, but you really want one, so light one up. He went, well, no, I don't want one. I want to stop. I said, light one up right now. And I started acting crazy. Right now, you understand me? He's like, now he's smoking like this. And he's freaked out. Now imagine, these are the feelings. Tuna casserole mixing with smoking. You get the idea? I don't like this. I don't like this. I said, that feel cool? No, it doesn't feel cool. No. I said, does that feel, no, it doesn't feel good. I don't like, what don't you like? I don't like this. What don't you like? I don't want to smoke. As soon as he said that, I like transformed. Because I acted like I was crazy. He's freaking out going, he's walked in a room with this insane man, right? So as soon as he says, I don't want to do this, I'd say, you don't want to smoke? I'd act really calm again. And he'd go, no. I said, well, then do whatever you want to do. He goes, well, I want to put it out. I said, well, do whatever you want to do. I said, really? I said, sure. He goes and starts to put it out. I said, light up 2 more. He said, no, I really don't want to. Light up 2 more right now! Now! No, you light them up now! Oh, gee. He's freaking out of his mind. And he's screaming, is that cool? Does that feel cool? No, no. Finally, eventually, he'd go like, I don't like this, I don't like it. You don't like what? I don't want to smoke. What's that? I don't want to smoke. I said, oh, well then, do whatever you want to do. He's like, well, I want to put them out. I said, go ahead. Really? Sure. He puts them out. You can just see he's afraid, right? Puts them out. I said, light up 6 more. He's like, I light up 6 more now. And I go 10 times crazy. And he said, put them between his fingers. Come on, suck on every one of them. Suck on them. How's that feel? Finally, we get to the point, I'd say, light up 5 more. And I had a whole ashtray filled with half-smoked cigarettes, put it on his nose. He's breathing, there's smoke in his face, hating it, right? How's that feel? I hate it. Right? I'd say, light up another one. He said, no. I said, you light up another one right now. No, you can't make me smoke. Now we broke the pattern. So then when you get an alternative? And so he went outside and he dumped his cigarettes over the side down into the ocean. I wouldn't do that now, but he did it. And he blew his nose, and all this black soot came out, right? Just all over the place in his handkerchief, right? Kept blowing his nose, you know. And I did too, because I was in the room taking it all in also. It's a terrible way to do it stuff. It's one of the reasons I stopped doing them eventually, came up with a different technique, right? Because I was going to have cancer doing all these therapies on these people, right? And so he goes out there, now he's breathing fresh air, and the fresh air feels so good, and then he comes up with the alternative and condition it. It works. It always comes down to leverage, interrupting the pattern, and creating an empowering alternative. Stand up and stretch. Will stop me all the time, ask me these different questions, but most people have a question like, what does it take to get rich and happy instantly with no effort? Some version of that question. And I'll usually look at them and say, do you really want to know, or are you just asking? Okay, someone said the speed of the movement. Is it moving slow or fast? How about the direction of the movement? Does that make any difference? What if you imagine watching a monster movie and the monster's coming at you like this? Does that feel different if the monster's going, or if the monster's going,